Joining us now, two veterans of the war in Iraq. Geoff Millard is president of the D.C. chapter of Iraq Veterans Against the War, and David Bellavia wrote about his Iraq War experience in the book entitled House to House. Thanks to both of you for coming in. Geoff, let me start with you. You bitterly oppose this war now. You hear about these two troops who wrote that article in the New York Times and are now dead. What goes through your mind?
Well, it really breaks my heart, Wolf. Every time that I see a U.S. service member that is killed in Iraq, knowing that it's a futile occupation that should never have happened and needs to end immediately, it's really painful to know that that family is going to go through the worst and darkest days of their time, and it didn't have to happen. David,
when we spoke the last time, you lamented the thought that buckets of blood could be for naught, for nothing, and you expressed hope that was not the case. What goes through your mind when you hear about these two soldiers who were killed?
Well, first of all, let me just reiterate what my peer just said. It's devastating any time we lose an American serviceman overseas, period. There's no need to bring politics into this. There's no need to criticize someone's different point of view. We lost two American heroes, regardless of their political outlook. You know, I got 336 pages in my book, House to House, that talks about Democrats and Republicans, people from all parts of our country, from all economical groups that are fighting this war. And politics doesn't enter the front line when you're in the trenches getting shot at by these bad guys. So
all right, Geoff,
they're patriots, period.
Geoff, you want to respond to that?
Well, I couldn't agree more, but I do think that politics does enter into it. I mean, when I was in Iraq over the 13 months that I was there, my unit talked about politics all the time. But the fact of the matter is you watch your buddy's back when the time comes, and he watches yours when the time comes. And that's the way that the military works, and I think that we should, I just wish that every U.S. service member who was killed in Iraq got kind of attention that these two brave young soldiers have gotten in their passing. I think that it would send a huge message to the American people if every U.S. service member's name, photo, and life story was told on television the way that these two brave young men have seen their lives.
They wrote in that article, David, that this war was not going the way the politicians here in Washington who support the war are suggesting. What do you want to hear, David, from the president tonight? What would reassure you?
Well, you know, I mean, the historical perspective is always great when you're looking at this war. Wars are won and wars are lost. In House to House, I talk about the worst part of the fighting. This is in Fallujah, close quarters battle. We're talking about, you know, multiple gunshot wounds from the enemy are on a par with bite marks and broken noses and eye gouges. We're talking about horrible, horrible fighting. But we won in Fallujah, and the blood we spilt in Fallujah is the reason why Anbar is safer now. And if we can look at Iraq as being a war that we can win, we have a strategy on the ground.
So you
now.
believe it's winnable?
Absolutely. Any war is winnable. We're the United States of America. Any fight that we're in, we're going to win. And, you know, look, the American people are against this war. All I would have to say is that, you know what, the American people aren't fighting this war, sir. We're having 1/2 of 1% of America today is in conflict right now.
Geoff, what do you want to hear from the president tonight?
Well, I, of course, would like to hear him say that all U.S. forces, not just merely the ones that are being forced to leave because they don't have replacements at the end of this so-called surge, to be coming home, but that's not going to happen. As his political appointee, General Petraeus, said in front of the Congress, that he couldn't even say that this war was making us safer. It's not making us safer. It's hurting the military. It's hurting us here at home. It's not protecting America.
But let me challenge you, Geoff. Political appointee, this is a 4-star general. He's a career professional who spent more than 30 years in the U.S. Army, risked his life on many occasions, not only in Iraq, but in Bosnia and elsewhere. Why would you call him a political appointee and take a slap at him like that?
Well, I'm not taking a slap at him. I don't think that his service was at all dishonorable, but let's face it, he was put into the position that he's in as a political appointee of the Bush administration. He was put there as a political appointee to continue the occupation of Iraq, and that's really what we're talking about here, too, is an occupation, not a war like we saw in World War II, whereas if we defeated a country, it is an occupation. Saddam has been out of power now for quite some time, and we're occupying a foreign country.
You know, when I spoke to General Jalwan, he's going to be joining us, the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, the other day, he did make the point, David, that the U.S. military headquarters very often are in these palaces of Saddam Hussein, and to a lot of Iraqis, they see these U.S. generals sitting in Saddam's palaces. They say this is U.S. military occupation. These guys aren't here to liberate Iraq. They're here to occupy Iraq. I assume when you were there in Fallujah and elsewhere, you had a sense of some of the anger from Iraqis themselves.
You know, I never had time to really sense the anger from the Iraqis that weren't, you know, actively engaging us with bullets and rockets. I can tell you that there are individuals that are sleeping in palaces, and I think that is part of the transition that General Petraeus was talking about in 2008. We need to leave those areas. Those palaces were built on the backs and on the blood of Iraqi, you know, money that was pretty much stolen from the people. They need to be given back to the people. So I would agree that it is definitely negative for us to be staying any more than we need to be in those palaces.
I want to thank both of you for your service to the United States. Geoff Millard, David Bellavia, you disagree strongly on this war, but we can all agree that you and all of the other United States men and women who are fighting over there have our total support. Thanks.